Today on The Nightlife, we're going to talk about how to speed up your role-playing game session, how to get through combats and non-combats just a bit quicker. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Nightlife here on Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, the Game Master for the Knights, and today I am joined by Bob.
Hello, everybody.
And I am joined by Mr. Matthew Holloway.
Hello.
Hello. Tim and Nick are out today. So today we're going to just kind of cover a roundtable discussion about ideas on how to make your gameplay a little bit faster. This isn't necessarily a Pathfinder 2 video, but a lot of these tips, tricks will apply to any role-playing game, especially one that uses minis and dice and has a lot of rules. So your Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, your Savage Worlds, any of those type of games. But some of the items will be specifically about Pathfinder 2nd edition. So we had some comments about some suggestions about what things people would like to see. And in this case, one of them was, boy, some of these games can take a while, right? You're talking
especially combat for me.
Yeah. And if you've been following along on our actual play podcast, which I recommend you to take a look at, you know that some of these combats can take 30, 45 minutes, even an hour. And it can be sometimes very difficult to get through a combat in a role-playing game these days. And even some of the non-combat encounters can be pretty long.
At least those ones, there's some usually back and forth interaction. The combat ones, I feel like I take a turn, then I don't take another turn for 20 minutes, which can be a little rough, especially because I majorly play almost exclusively PF2. So it does take a little bit of time.
Certainly. And, and some of that, I think some of those factors there's just like some basic ideas that we can kind of apply that I think can make those games go a lot faster. That can make those combats go a lot faster. And one of them is just starting right at the beginning of combat. And that's with initiative. So if you've seen our actual play, you'll know that I have a bunch of note cards folded in half. And there you go, Bob. This is 2.0 right here.
Yeah, this is dry erase ones.
For a long time, I would just take a 3x5. So I guess the first part of this is just making initiative publicly known.
Yes.
Right. A long time ago, I used to have a dry erase board that I kept right over my shoulder. That was really awesome. But in a pinch, and what I've used for many, many years, is just 3x5 note cards, usually cut in half, with the characters' names on both sides, and then maybe some additional ones that just say like Monsters 1, Monsters 2, Monsters 3. And I'll line them up on my my GM screen or my DM screen. That way, my players know what the initiative order is, not just me.
Do other games hide it a lot? I mean, I've only played with you, so I guess I don't know.
It's public information because I'm going to tell you, I rolled a 6, I rolled a 12.
Here's the thing.
It's having it actively visible so you can see.
Very easily readable.
Yeah.
I follow this. I follow this person or that person.
What was a theme which you'll notice with me a lot is I don't like arbitrarily stupid hidden information. And I've seen some people say like, well, the players don't know when the monsters are going to go until they go.
Until after round one.
It's like, and then it's public information. So it's like, yeah, it just seems like that's a lot of work to just get a very minor little gotcha moment. I don't think it's very exciting or cool to know when the monsters are going to go anyways. So,
and it might slow things down.
It's going to slow things down even more. But by having the initiative public, players can look at the initiative order and they know, okay, we're currently here on the Bugbear's turn. Then it's the Dwarf Barbarian's turn. Okay, and then it's my turn.
Yeah, perhaps it slightly breaks down some of the thematic elements of it, but it greatly increases the efficiency of the time to play.
And then maybe also not just yell out the number to
all
the
at once.
GM.
That's the rule. It's all at once. Make sure you yell.
I don't know how many times we've done this. We'd be like,
the same time.
20 and 27. And Derek's like, one at a time. Yeah. Bob, what did you get? Matt, what did you get?
Yeah.
Now we do all collective one person in order.
And I think if you do clockwise or start from the GM, we know we go clockwise. Bob, go around.
I didn't mean to get off on a tangent this early, but initiative is dumb. I mean, quite frankly, because it doesn't really matter. I mean, like back in the day in like the 1970s versions of D&D, like initiative was really important because things had really low hit points. You had really low hit points. Striking first often meant striking last.
Very true.
Like you would die, if I won the initiative, I might get one swing, then the monster gets a swing, and then I get a second swing, and sometimes that's all it took. Now with
That sounds fast and nice.
now with monsters having tons of hit points, players having tons of hit points, it really matters less. And a lot of times people end up delaying and readying anyways, even if you do go first in the initiative order. It's just a lot of work. But it's not even the work that bothers me about initiative. What bothers me about initiative the most is that transition, whether, in Pathfinder 2 we would call it exploration mode, right? And you would call it exploration mode. And you're creeping through the dungeon, you're going through the ancient temple or the woods, and then suddenly, breaking from the tree line, the ground rips apart as two massive land sharks, boulettes, rupture from the ground and start charging into the party. And it's like, that's a very dramatic moment,
I'm
right?
invested.
That's when the music shifts and it goes into this like, wow, we're under attack. Or arrows start whizzing past your head as the orc raiders launch their ambush. It's a very dramatic moment. And in that moment, I want to be able to just slam, my microphone in my case, I want to be able to slam. I go, all right, what do you do? But that's not what happens.
Nope.
Instead, there's this weird arbitrary moment where like, okay, roll for initiative. And that itself is pretty exciting, right?
Yeah.
Those words, roll for initiative. It's like, okay, it's that this is a transitional moment.
The screen is going
down.
Yeah, the screen is going blurry, and we know we're transitioning from the world map into
we're going from the world map to the fight.
Oh yeah,
right.
It's the Final Fantasy
and
stuff.
that's really exciting. Except then, after I shout out roll for initiative, there's this like awkward exercise in number generation and sorting that occurs because it's like, okay, you got a 27, I got a 27. Okay, who's got the higher initiative? I got the higher initiative. Okay, you go first, and you're sitting here just trying to, quick sort or merge sort or heap sort.
It's a buzzkill.
It's a buzzkill. You want to go boom right into it.
Computers,
right? And so, and all that for something that quite frankly doesn't matter a lot. But that being said, I think that if that information is at least public, then players do know where they are in the order. And what Bob was hinting at is that what we've done here on Knights of the Last Call is our initiative tents are laminated. And in addition to these blank ones, which I can use as a GM, I can write down, okay, these are the orcs. There are also pre-made ones, which are nowhere to be found.
I thought Burroughs was over there. No?
or pre-made for your monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. I got them over here. So we have some pre-made ones, right, that have, for me, they have the name, but then the player can just write their initiative on it with a dry erase marker.
Yep.
And instead of shouting it out all over the table, everyone just rolls their initiative, writes it down, and then hands it over to me or hands it to like an initiative captain who sits near me. They can sort them and then just hand me a pre-sorted pile, and I can just very quickly bloop, 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 put these down.
And while we're doing that, you're rolling the monsters initiative. So when we give it to you, all of a sudden you start putting them out there. It's like, oh, this is what's happening.
And you're doing the same thing. You're creating the cards for your monsters and their initiative.
But that cuts that in half.
Yeah.
That
Well,
time in half.
I think it even cuts it more than in half. And I think more important than you might say, okay, what does that save you? A couple of minutes? Yes, I agree. It's just a couple of minutes. But those are very important minutes because that's when the drama is at its peak, right?
The hype train.
The hype train is real, and that's when you want to get right into it.
You
really want to get into the action. So I do think that using some sort of way to publicly display your initiative, and I think I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I think these laminated cards with the dry erase have been the best option so far.
And that is a super cheap option. I mean, I know there's other things like Arcane Goods has like, ones that have fancy symbols.
We made these.
I mean, it's a laminated laminator and a piece of paper.
Yeah. So again,
awesome.
I think that's a big win.
Yes.
So that's one step that's pretty quick. Secondly, for newer players, I've noticed, even for some more seasoned players, just having good dice etiquette and knowing your dice is pretty important for speeding up play.
You're talking about knowing where your dice are on the table?
I just mean everything about dice. We talked a little bit about this before the game, before we started recording here today, but like, number one, are your dice visible? We talk about speeding up the game. If every person takes an extra 5 or 6 seconds so that they can peer down at their really cool new crystal cast wormwood dice that no one can read, including the person who owns it, like, multiply that by a lot of dice rolls and you're eating up 10, 15, 20 minutes over the course of a game session.
Yeah, it's small amounts each time, but if it adds up, like if every time I roll a D6, I got to count the pips, we're going to be here all night.
Pips are great.
Not sponsored by Chessex,
Yeah.
but the best type of dice.
Yeah, so high contrast dice. I like
Kraken dice are good too.
Yeah, I like high contrast dice that are easy to read, not just for you, but for other people on the table. That helps it.
I also helps that us all get engaged. If I'm rolling, especially Matt when he's fireballing lots of damage, the more numbers I can read, the more I am enticed to the game, which means there's less time where I'm going like twiddling my thumbs. You know, I am like, oh, what is he about to do? Oh, 6.
Engaged.
I see lots of 6s and I see lots of 5s. We got a good roll here. You know, I'm getting pumped. And the more you're engaged, the more your session, I think, has a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
I
it
think
speeds it up.
Yeah, and I mean, and that kind of is another kind of interesting point, which is, you know, and I don't want to be rude here, but you know, pay attention.
Oh, I should do that.
I mean, I get
Squirrel.
it, right? I mean, sometimes it's a scene between two characters and an NPC, and you're not involved, or it's combat, and there's 3 or 4 other people before you go again. But you need to pay attention. You need to be aware of what's going on in the game. You need to be aware of what's going on the battlefield. It's going to make you your turn faster. It's going to allow you to get more involved, I think.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's a mechanical thing, we kind of talked about this. I think Tim talked about this in our last video. Make sure that you know, in Pathfinder 2, you get a reaction, and that's something that you can do when it's not even your turn. So look for an opportunity to pick up spells or abilities or feats that give you a reaction, because at least that way, when it's someone else's turn, you're always keeping an eye out, right? To say, oh, is this an opportunity where I'm going to be able to use my reaction to make an attack of opportunity or to do some sort of a cool effect or cast a shield spell or whatever the case may be. But it's the same thing with board games or with anything else. It's like, if you're paying attention to what's going on in the game, then when it's your turn, there's not that like, huh? And I'm not saying that you're just being like blatantly like, I'm on my phone and I'm not paying attention at all. You might be very well mannered. You might be very well meaning. You might be looking over your character sheet, making sure that the number of arrows that you have on your character sheet is accurate, you know?
But this is about knowing what you're going to do when it comes to your turn.
Sure.
Because you're paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah. And I mean, and part of that could be, you know, having a plan with your party members, you know, like understanding that this is the plan, right? Because if everybody else has been focusing on monster A because, you know, you want to get him dead, and then it's your turn, you go, okay, I'm going to go after monster B. And everyone's like, wait, what are you doing? Like,
well, this is a lot of times during our AP, I'm like, hey, Matt, are you going to enlarge me next turn? You're like, yeah, I'm going to delay, or I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to enlarge Azius, my character, and we're going to do this. I'm like, okay, that means I should probably do this. And so this is what I'm going to do during my turn. And because we maybe have that little bit of communications, our turns go a little faster, and I think we're more engaged. So they actually feel faster too, but they actually physically go faster because we have a plan. We're trying to get to a certain goal here, and we're trying to, you know, accomplish certain tasks during this thing.
Yeah. Teamwork makes it go faster, and then the more familiar you are with your group, you know, you're more likely to know, okay, Bob's probably going to do this, so I'm just going to anticipate that or get ready to facilitate that in some way.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think that there's definitely an element there of if you have a sort of a battle plan and you sort of understand each other's, you know, actions, it can start to go faster. But at the end of the day, right, it's not really about going faster, right? Because if the combat took 2 hours, but it was awesome and you were engaged the whole time, who cares? Like, if you went and saw an...
You'd be like, wow, we just sat down.
Would you really have been that much... Would you have been happier if Marvel's Endgame had only been 90 minutes?
No, I thought it was a great movie.
Right. No, it was like almost 3 hours long.
Yeah, I didn't even take a pee break.
Right. You might have wanted, you're like, you left wanting more maybe. You're like, oh man, I wish I could have seen like the Hulk really go to town on Thanos. I'm sad that they cut that, you know?
Yeah, when you're having a good time, time seems to fly.
Yeah, and so it's not, none of these tips are really about speeding up combat so much.
Though they will cut time away, but it's about cutting BS time away. Not BS in like us BSing, but like time that could be saved.
Right. And so, you know, we talked about sort of initiative and getting into your combat turn. We talked about, you know, knowing your dice.
Well, going back to the dice really quick especially knowing your dice, knowing what dice you're going to roll. This is one of the big mistakes I make is I have my pile of dice just sitting in front of me and they look awesome. And I go grab my D20 and then I can't find my D12s and then I'm looking for my D6 and it takes me an extra 5 seconds. And then my buddy goes and takes an extra 5 seconds. And then when I roll my dice, I put them right back in that pile. Maybe having the dice set out, you know, ahead of time, how you're going to roll. If you need to add a random dice here and there, it's going to be easy.
Sure.
And then we talked a lot, which I things, great ideas, but maybe if you have additional things in PF2, fire damage.
Yeah, I mean, this is true in 5th edition as well.
Okay, so yeah, so if you're going to do other types of damage, maybe, so I do electric damage.
Yes.
And my dice is the same color as my damage I do with my my maul. And maybe if I made this blue or like
well, number one, I think
light,
it would be cool.
Yellow one.
or yellow, yeah, like a yellowish dice, yeah. And then, and not only is that easier for me to read, it's easier for me to add. It's easier for the DM to quickly see that that's the electric damage. It's easier for everyone else to see that. It's easier to remember what happened as a story arc. Oh, I remember when I did 3 damage. When it's the same color, I assume it gets lost. And so therefore, I think I'm losing the experience, but also I think I'm losing the speed of being able to add. And
Yeah.
I think that helps differentiate a little bit. Again, we talked about being able to read them very easy, but maybe there's more than just reading the number. It's more about reading the type, fire damage dice. Maybe it's red. Now again,
Yeah, I mean that you were spouting some blasphemy there,
what?
Matt, earlier.
Not Matthew.
With
about like maybe we just get rid of individual dice altogether.
yeah, I mean, so there's a balance between a lot of players want to choose their own individual dice that they feel comfortable with, but if you ignore that for a moment and you look at it from a game perspective, you can build it in such a way where like nondescript things are black and white, and then anytime you add in red, that may mean something like fire.
Right, you're talking about people wouldn't get a choice in the dice.
No,
It would
everyone's D20 is the exact same.
Right,
It's
they're
a
all-
black and white D20,
Right.
white with black numbers. And then, your normal damage is just from your weapon. It's just more black and white D6s or whatever. And then you have fire damage or whatever damage comes in. You do a fireball. Those are all going to be red D6s. It makes it easier so that the GM can see what's going on to make decisions if they're, weaknesses or immunities. But the downside is you don't have your own custom dice, and then you also have to have, how many? I need 8d6 red.
Hey, it's just more an excuse to buy more dice. It's
Yeah,
fine with me.
that will work too.
From Chessex.
Yeah,
Dun,
right.
dun, dun.
Please
Dun, dun,
sponsor.
dun.
Yeah,
That
and
big old pound of bago dice.
yeah, and you mentioned finding your dice and having to pull
That's
them out.
one of the things I noticed.
Just keep them organized off board too. Like
I
not
don't know
only
why I do that
Not only
sometimes.
prepping that on my turn, I've got 2 more turns. I'm going to use
Especially
my
if you're a
maul.
melee character.
Yeah, I know
It's
on my
so
weapon.
easy for
It's going to
me.
be here's my dice set. That's one thing. But
so
the other thing is
easy.
that like having them in reserve, so that like you have your normal dice ready to go for your attack, but then hey, you're gonna don't forget your 1d6 whatever. Oh, now if you have to find the d6 from your set of random dice, but if they're all 4s and then 6s and then 8s and then 12, oh, it's right here.
Yeah, especially when we're taking that for granted. I mean, if you're a really new player, you're playing with newer players. They may not like. I mean, I could identify.
true.
I could identify a D12 by feel, right? Like for a lot of new players, like D12, D10, D8, those are all very, very hard to identify.
The Pathfinder beginner box did a really good job of color coding the different ones.
That's
And
another way to
and
color
on
code it
on
for-
their
yeah,
sheet. They
very
would have
early.
the color of the dice. I thought
Right.
Yeah.
beginner box did a great job for Pathfinder too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But to be able to use those dice though, you do have to know what you're looking for.
You do have to know a little bit.
Yeah. So, I think there are some etiquette, concepts there, but I think one of the biggest things though is just learning the game and knowing the rules. Page flipping is horrible. And this is kind of a controversial take, but you'll know here that on Knights of Last Call we use cards, decks of cards that have all the status conditions on them from the status condition deck. Some of our spellcasters, Gwildor, uses a deck of spells that has all of his spells on it. And very popular, especially in 5th edition, is D&D Beyond, and you have these digital character sheets. And I think that has made players worse players, and I think that it has made players slower. Because even if you have something like this great online tool, if I have to go and look it up each time because I don't know how my character works, then number one, it means I have to look it up every time. Instead of just, it's my turn. I don't even need to look at my character sheet. I know exactly what I roll and I know exactly how much damage I do. But this is the big one. If anything changes, and suddenly you're forced to have to change something on the fly, you don't even know how that operates.
Correct.
Because you don't maybe even know how your calculation came about. And I understand that D&D Beyond and Path Builder, and these are all very popular tools, and digital tools are very, very popular. I don't like them. Not because I'm some Luddite who hates technology. I have a YouTube channel.
I mean, they're cool, but But they helicopter parent you. They handicap you.
Right. The player never learns how their character works.
Yeah, and real quick in physics with quantum mechanics, for the finals, the professor would say, bring your book. It's for the class. Here's a $5 book you can buy that I wrote that's tailored to this class with a bunch of papers. You can buy it. $5. You bring your computer and the internet. And none of that, print out a sheet of all the equations, and none of that is going to matter if you don't know how to work the physics.
Correct.
And so that's sort of the same thing. Like once you understand how it works and why it works, I just need those as references to make my decision. But I know ultimately that I can figure out what I need to based on the rules of the game, the rules of physics.
Right. Like if I have encoded in my brain, okay, I know exactly what my attack bonus is because I'm level 8 and my proficiency is master, and because my weapon item bonus is a +2 because I know I have a +2 item crystal. Like if you know that in your DNA, and then suddenly I get sickened, and I know exactly what sickened is. It's a -1 status penalty to my attack rolls, to my D20 based checks. Then I immediately can I don't even think about it. It just the math happens. Whereas if I have to actually do the arithmetic, and I have something written down, and I'm always referring to it, but then that's written down. It says
your crutch.
It says +18. Now I got to remember every time I got to subtract 2 and add 1 because it's a crutch, and I think it slows players down. And
they know it's there to help them when they can't remember, which is fine in a sense.
Yes.
But
I don't
when
want
you
people,
rely on it,
I don't want people flipping through books all the time because
No.
that slows the game down too.
But if you don't learn, you just rely on it.
Yeah.
This happened. I played D&D 5e when I first started, and I saw D&D Beyond. I thought, this is so cool. I got out of my phone. It's gonna level me up right here. It's so cool. I think I had a tablet at the time, but either way. And Dirk mid session was like, "All right, you leveled up," and he said, "All right, what's your HP?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm gonna have to just go. Hold on a second. Let me just update to level 3, and I think it just updates my HP, and there we go." There's like, but do you even understand like why or how you got more HP or what any of that is? No, I did not.
And that kind of goes back to like, if you get a BS, a Bachelor of Science in physics, I have to explain to you the quantum mechanics. But if you're getting a Bachelor's of Arts in physics, well, I don't really know all the things, but I know if I punch these in here, if I punch these numbers here, the general theme means that this should happen.
So it depends on what on the BA.
It depends on what type of game you're going for. So if you're having someone where there's new players who are just trying to sort of, I don't really need to know everything. I just kind of want to live in the world of Pathfinder and D&D. Maybe I just know high level. I use something that adds the numbers. But if you really want to be, proficient in the game, really understand what's going on, really be, hey, I know what I'm doing. Then you want to be able to do it backwards and forwards of just
you don't want to rely on something.
You
want to understand that something, and you want to understand that the element. Why does my HP go up like that? Why does my attack bonus like this happens? Because when things happen on the fly, you are also
and my point is that there's merit in both for different players.
I agree. But I totally agree with that.
But I also think that and this is like a little bit of a soapbox stand, which is like, absolutely, there are plenty of players who don't want to have to learn all those. But I think if you're playing a game, you're going to play it well, you should learn the mechanics of that game. There are games that have literally 5-page rule books and 10-page rule books. You don't want to invest in learning a game? Go play one of those.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. And the reason games like D&D and Pathfinder exist is because you play like Fate Accelerated Edition, which the whole rule book is 15 pages long, and you go, wow, that's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying this. And if that's it, you're good. But if you're ever like, man, I wish there was more going on underneath the hood.
I wish I could customize this thing, or
I could customize this and get this, and I really would love to see the shades of gray when I make this action versus this action. Well, that's what these bigger, better games are for. But if you're going to do those and play these games and then ignore that, I don't understand that.
Yeah, so when you understand your character better and understand why things are happening and the numbers that are on your character sheet.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know how many times, and I'm new. Trust me, I'm learning about this stuff too, guys. I have to refer back to my character sheet. Oh, I have a plus this and that and this and that. But all that just takes time. And it takes time during your turn. It takes time during actions and checks. And all that can be quicker if we can... If you know more, if you're invested in your character and invest in your character, you can invest in the rules and invest in the game, it can speed up minutes and minutes, and each of those can compile the number of players you have at your table.
I'll just kind of dovetail here a little bit, change course a little bit, but you want to speed up your game also too? Don't play with 6 players.
That's also true.
Look, if you play for 4 hours and there are 4 players, then each player in a weird, assuming you're completely equitable, will get 1 hour of spotlight time, of attention time.
Are you talking about that means the GM didn't have any spotlight
Well, the
time?
GM presumably had 100%. But you don't have a game without the GM.
There you go.
It's very
But
telling.
that means that for 25% of the time you were engaged, it was your turn, and the other 75% of the time it was not. That's a big ask.
Yes.
Now, take it to 6 players or 7 players.
Even
Right?
longer.
It's even like now you might have like 30 minutes of active time in a 4-hour session. So I think, the game's become very popular, and I know it's very, especially online, to just jamming people in, but I love 3 people parties.
Three to four.
Three to
the same
4.
thing with board games for me. Like 3 to 4 is a good number.
Yeah, 3
for
to 4
board games.
5 starts really to push it.
Yep.
And
I don't know if I can handle that many.
yeah, 3 and
people.
4 is like really the perfect number of
I
players.
mean, again,
we play
that's
a
for
lot.
your.
We
That's
play
for
a lot of 3-player games, Matt.
Oh,
you and I, and they're great.
Yeah, 3 and 4 is the sweet spot for board games. But like again, circumstances matter. So if you're playing like a pickup game at Gen Con where there's a certain theme, all right, 6, 7 people, whatever, we're having fun. It's a one-time thing. But for I think like a normal campaign for week to week or month to month or however you go, and I think
Yeah, and also
3 or
too. I mean,
4.
again, I'm going off on a tangent, but like each player represents an uncertainty in your gaming session, right? So if I have me plus 3 players, then for a gaming session to occur, I need to have 4 people who all have a free date on their calendar. If you have 6 people in your party or 7 people
right.
in your party, now you need 7 or 8 people who are all free on one date.
Exponentially.
so 12 D1s. It's
Yes.
just me and no one else.
Right.
It'll be the perfect game.
Exactly.
Before
So
we get too off tangent, can we talk about one rule that I really like that I watched some of Derek's other players implement is rolling the hit dice
Oh, sure.
with the damage dice.
not the hit dice, the attack roll.
Sorry, the attack roll with the damage dice.
Yeah, I mean this is an old one.
I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, this is an old one that goes back to the beginning of time.
This is new to me.
Even back to basic D&D, which is roll your D20 to hit and roll your damage dice all in the same roll, and I'll take that even a step further,
Okay.
which is to say, I'm very cavalier with letting my players know what the attack, what the armor class or the
Oh,
defenses
so
of them.
not hiding it too much. If
Yeah.
they find it out pretty easily.
Once it's known, it's known. Or
Once
once,
it's
yeah.
okay. Once it's known, it's known. If they fought it a few times, it's known. Like because here's the thing: like the players know what they rolled, right? They know that they rolled a 27 and that hit, and then they rolled a 25 and that missed. So they're like, okay, so the creature's AC is like a 26 or a 27. Okay, we could go through all that rigmarole, or I could just tell them that the creature's armor class is 26. This does a couple of things that's really awesome because number one, if the players know that the monster's armor class is 26, and they know that they have a plus 18 to hit, then they can, before it's even their turn, know I've done the math. I need an 8.
Yep.
I don't even have to do math when I attack. I'm just rolling a d20 and looking.
Yeah, because now you've shifted the burden of calculation.
Right
from
now
the
it's
GM to the player.
right.
So now in PF2, it's did I hit or did I crit?
Right, and that's even easier in PS2 because it's plus 10. So you go,
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
looking for an 8 or an 18.
Yep.
That's easy. That's really easy.
that's-
But secondly, you avoid having these conversations like we were talking about before. Like how many lines of interaction, lines of conversation. If Bob here goes to attack, and
I roll.
well,
I roll to attack.
no, we'll play it out.
Okay.
You're like, I'm going to attack.
I'm going to attack.
All right, great. Make your attack roll.
I roll my D20. I rolled this 16 plus my attack bonus. Did I hit?
That also tilts me is when players roll their d20 and they go 15. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
the
oh,
GM
that
doesn't care
that
what
misses.
you're.
That
No,
misses, and you're like,
again, all taking time. Did I hit?
Yes, you hit. You hit.
Okay.
Roll your damage.
Hold on 1 second. Let me add up all these. 20.
Okay, great. And I write it down. Right? There's a lot of back and forth. But if Bob knows that all he needs to roll is a 10, then he goes,
15 damage hit 15 damage.
right, that's it. Boom. In a sense, he doesn't even have to tell me. I mean, he can, we were talking
Yeah,
about
we
this.
can
Like,
talk cold to.
you could be like, okay, I got a 30 a hit, so this much damage.
Yeah, and I think that it's still it's worth it to yell out the number to make sure that everyone's math is on the right page. But to say 15 hit, 6 damage.
I would also even
Two
go
fire.
I'll also say this. Honestly, you know what? Unless a player is willfully cheating, which is kind of weird in a game with
Probably shouldn't be on your in your group.
with no money and no competition.
Nothing on the line.
Nothing on the line with no money and competition. But I don't even really care if the math is right, you know?
Well, I just mean to say that, like, if Bob's doing that, he may have forgotten that his boots of
it's more just double check.
Boots of badassery didn't.
Oh yeah, right. Just but my point is though is like assuming you know that Bob knows how to play his character. Bob doesn't. Bob can just roll his dice and his damage in one roll, and then he goes like when it's his turn, he goes, okay, I'm gonna go up there, I'm gonna smash my warhammer at him. Boom, hit 25 damage.
Yep.
And it's become a declarative. Statement
because,
instead of this
because we know the AC,
right?
Because we know what we have to accomplish. It takes off at least probably 10 to 15 seconds per time. And multiple attacks. I mean, per time, asking the same question every time.
Sure.
Jeez Louise.
And that gets back, by the way, to paying attention, which is if someone goes through that whole rigmarole with the DM and then they find out, okay, the AC is 26. When it's your turn, you better damn well remember that. And
that might be a little irritating.
And then before it's your turn, you go, oh, okay, I know the creature's AC is 26 now because Bob recalled knowledge or because Matt did the math and figured out based on, taking, I don't know what they call that. Process of elimination.
Oh.
Matt figured out that the AC is 26. Okay, it's my turn.
Search.
And then they go, all right, 28, did I hit? Oh, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that can be irritating for the whole
my
table.
point is for transparency's sake, the more frequently, if everyone was in the habit, if everyone were in the habit of yelling out their number, and then if you know the AC, then saying whether or not you hit. But if you're still repetitively yelling out what you get and then whether or not you think you hit or not, or you figure that out, I think that would reinforce everyone else. Because if I say 25 hit, because I know it's 24, and 25 hit, 6 damage, well, now Bob just heard me reiterate 25 hit. Now Bob can think,
it.
Yeah.
I think the rolling with the damage is a nice way to cut the speed in half of everyone's rolls.
Unless you were so frequently going to lose, if you were going to so frequently missing, then it might not save time. But the vast majority of the time
you're going to hit.
And it doesn't take any, it takes very little extra effort to roll.
If you miss, then you just ignore half the things you just did.
Right.
But that still takes half the time. I mean, this roll, whether I have 4 dice in my hand, because I organized them beforehand, takes the same amount of time as it took me just to roll the 1. So
yeah. Now, we've talked a lot about combat, and to be fair, in Pathfinder 2, those are probably the things that really take the most time. And because your actions are sequestered and siloed in Pathfinder 2, well, and in D&D, in combat, meaning there's a concept of your turn and not your turn, I think that's where it's probably the most important because that's where you feel like I don't have agency right now.
Feels the slowest.
I don't have agency right now because I can't act. But, there is also games that can slow down when you're not in combat. Okay, this could be whether you're maybe in town or maybe you're doing some sort of social interaction with an NPC. It could also be during exploration of a dungeon, of a wilderness, of a mountain. You need to understand that there's what is the point of these scenes as a player. It's not something that's ever going to be described. We're never going to talk about it before the scene, but you need to understand that every time there's a moment in a role-playing game, it's an opportunity for you to shine a little bit. Okay, think of it as like spotlight time. Understand that when you're in a sort of role-playing or an exploration scene, there's an opportunity for you to highlight something about your character, for you to do something, to say something, to reveal something, to make a note about something. And that's the spotlight dropping on you. And it's very important for you to use it, take that opportunity, and then pass it along.
Move on. Okay? We're not novel writers. And we're not Critical Role. I'm not Critical Role. You're not Critical Role. Unless you're Matt Mercer watching this, then you are Critical Role. If you are Matt Mercer watching it, comment below and let people know you are watching this. Don't know why you're doing that, but thank you.
But the goal of these scenes should be to add a little bit of spice about your character, about the world, and then move on. And then it should be very apparent very quickly, right, of what are we trying to accomplish in this scene? Okay, we're trying to convince the guard to let us through the gate. Okay. Well, then the actions we should be taking, the things that we should be saying should be leading us towards some sort of conclusion. And then once it's very clear that we've reached that point of conclusion, scene, right? Don't take your character off.
Don't drag it on.
Yeah, don't drag it on. Just move the story forward, move it along, right? There's this really, really tough, there's some people who want to really just chew on the scenery, and that's fine if everybody's on board for it. But again, when you are using the spotlight, you're taking it from other players.
Yeah, you have to be actually considerate of your player. If we have this 4-person table with the GM,
I guess I don't count.
Well, you said you're at 100%.
Okay.
But I only have 25% of the time. If I decide that I'm going to take 35% of the time, well, then every one of my players is now has 5% less or 40%.
Or they're not, and then it just takes twice as long to get anything done.
Yeah, but I have to be considered. I mean, yes, do I want the spotlight? Sure, of course. I'd hope that I want to have fun, but I think also having fun is listening to Matt talk about something pretty cool, and I don't want to be dragging this thing on. And I kind of want to find out what's happening more in the AP, or what's next behind the door, or what's the next in the adventure. And if we sit in town for the next 2 sessions, I'm like, what are we actually doing?
And if that's fine for you and your group, I mean, that's fine.
That's me. That's me personally.
I think most groups would be better solved or better served by having people pay attention, understanding, okay, what are the beats of this particular scene, right? Think about it like a screenwriter or a script.
Yeah, I think that's big.
Yeah. And what are we trying to accomplish here? Because anything that isn't adding to this scene is actually detracting from it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think if you really focus, and then as a player, when you do add something, you're not just making some random off-the-cuff statement. Be like, oh, I miss my home. Like, wait, what are we? We're talking about.
Yeah, like someone from Bob's past or Azius's past shows up, and it's a character that Azius remembered from years ago. That's a moment where I'm like, all right, well, I mean, this is probably going to be an Azius. I'm going to listen intently because there might be something I could chime in or have relevancy. But
yeah.
And I understand there's a plot point we're going towards Azius, and we're trying to hear that.
And that's a really good point, Matt, which is, there are scenes where it's not your scene. And as a GM and as a player, both people in respective need to understand, okay, this is an Azius, this is a Bob and Derek scene.
Take a step back.
And it's not like it's super scripted. It's just recognizing it in the moment. That
right. No one needs to declare this at the table. You're just paying attention. You're being conscientious. You're being considerate. But then our goal should be, let's wrap this up in 5 minutes. Because while we're doing this, like as cool as and exciting as this isn't, other people aren't involved.
Yeah.
Right? This is not the time for a 30 or 40. If you are involved in this really heated debate about whether the imperial troops should be occupying the city or not, and you're kind of in this kind of political debate about the future of the empire and the dragon's influence, and everyone at the table is involved and everyone at the table is chiming in, go for hours. Yeah, go for 4 hours.
And then your session is a diplomatic thing, like arguing and positioning for power.
Right.
Cool. That's
but if
what that was
everybody
about.
else at the table came there expecting for you to, you're like, oh, I thought we were going to go to the dungeon.
Yeah. Why am I even here?
Right.
If you're going to talk to Matt for an hour, I don't even know why I showed up.
Yeah. If we're role playing, you purchasing feed for your pet, I'm not.
So read the room. I mean, that's what it really comes down to, is read the room and understand what the scene's purpose is as a GM and as a player, and try to move the story towards a conclusion and don't fight the current, It's so much easier as a game master when we have players who are on your side and you're kind of looking around and everybody's nodding their head because they're like, okay, this is really sweet because this is working, right? Because it feels cohesive.
Yeah.
Again, it's like an improv, right? Where you're not shutting people down. You're like, okay, I see where he's going with this.
You're propping people up.
Yeah,
maybe
and maybe it comes from experience.
Where she's going with this. Absolutely, these are all skills that need to be learned.
And maybe it comes from experience of playing with you for so long. But that's the thing I definitely get from you, where you're GMing and I'm playing, and we'll look at each other, and I'll know that you're okay. It's a moment for me to say something. I know it, or like I'll bring my character up to something, and then I'll see Derek's ready. I'm like, okay, he's gonna.
I need to learn that.
And then all right, he's gonna.
You are able to chime in perfectly when Derek stops talking. I never know. I interrupt Derek all the time. I'm sure, and Derek he hates this, trust me. I know, I've talked to him about, I'm a mature conversation. I've talked to him offline about this. But I think knowing the situation, reading the room is excellent, because knowing when to chime in is a big thing. And I think I chime in probably in the wrong situations where I think, and whatever, I'm learning. But I think Matt, you do a great job of hitting these like zinger one-liners, and the story keeps going and everyone's laughing, and it's perfect. I love it.
Well, some people are just funny, Bob.
Yeah, Matthew, you're funny. Let me just take some notes.
But that's true. So that's true in the non-combat encounters as well as the combat encounters. It's really just paying attention, understanding what it is that other people are trying to do, and just playing along with that and speeding that up.
I like it.
And then you're going to get back to your turn quicker, or it's going to be your time to do something. And
if you're courteous of other people, then other people, I hope, are courteous of you.
Well, yeah,
everyone's turns.
Yeah, one of the best advice I ever heard was that when you're sitting down at a table, whether you're a game master or a player, you're sitting down with a bunch of fellow players, right? You're all players. Some of you are just have the GM or DM role. But your number one goal at the table should be to make sure that every person at the table, every other person at the table is having a great time. Then your secondary priority should be to make sure that you're having a good time.
I suppose that's true for like conversation or
should be
social
life.
interactions just in general. Like, you're hanging out at a party and, your quiet buddy isn't talking much. I think paying attention and saying like, hey, join the conversation. What do you got to say?
Absolutely. But
that makes you a good person, Matt.
Yeah.
Not everyone's like that.
Well,
I appreciate you.
I think the most important takeaway of this is understanding that if you're doing that and everyone else is doing that, then that means that there are 3 or 4 or 5 other people at the table who's all are trying to make sure you're having a great time. You don't have to worry as much about it, right?
Yeah, we're all lifting
You
the
can
boat.
put that to a secondary concern because other people are going to help you do that.
Yeah, and it's kind of like in volleyball. Sometimes the best moves are like that sweet setup where you lob it and the guy's going to slam it down.
I don't know what this motion is. That looks like a carry motion. The correct motion is a set motion.
I'm not a volleyball player,
Sorry.
but setting it, and then that person knows that, oh, here comes Bob. I know that I set the situation.
I
up.
love being the
He's
center.
going to crash it. It's going to be great.
Right.
And taking your turn or your bit of the spotlight to prop up because your buddy's going to do something sweet.
and
I
is
think
cool
being
too.
assist is a great person.
And I can't speak for you guys, but I know that when I've been a player, I've always enjoyed being sort of that secondary support character type. Even in like a role playing situation, more than the person who is like,
Oh, it's great when you cast enlarge person on 2 people in 2 turns and they
Yeah.
switch their characters out and they're stomping around. You're like, hell yeah. This is
Right.
After I get enlarged, I'm actually more excited that you enlarged me. I'm
Yeah.
like, that was cool.
Yeah.
Like you did that to me. Like,
Plus, then from my perspective, it's like, oh, now he's going to stomp around. It's going to be great.
but either way, did we hit all the big?
I think we hit them all.
Let's
but-
what are the recaps? Give me the recaps.
So the recap, the first is, when you're playing in a combat situation, know how to use initiative, right? Make it public, make it
Keep it
available.
public.
Come up with a good system that you and your players can use in order to quickly gain initiative, and that everyone can follow it, and everyone knows when whose turn is it and when's it going to be their turn.
And save paper, laminate.
Yeah, and laminate your little slips. We love that system. Second is players need to know the rules of the game. They don't need to memorize every section of the game, but I do think that knowing how the game works is a very valuable skill. And I think some of these player aids and digital tools do hurt in that regard. Players need to know their characters. I mean, it goes without saying, but role-playing games are an investment, a hobby. It's not something that you can just easily, casually put your time into. I think that a player should be very proficient about, knowing what is on their sheet and what skills, feats, and abilities they have. They may not need to know what every feat in the rule book does, but they should probably know what the feats on their character sheet do. I think that's a reasonable ask. 4, just figure out what you're doing with your dice. Get ones that are good and that can be read easily. Make sure that they're put in a position where you can access them quickly. Maybe consider rolling your damage and your attack rolls at the same time. Come up with methodologies that you can use to just eliminate these unnecessary, back and forth between the GM and the players about, did I hit? Okay, I did hit. Okay, I'm going to roll damage. Okay, you can roll damage. Okay, I rolled my damage, right? You could eliminate all that in just one roll, especially if, as a player, you already know what the monster's armor class is. Maybe you figured it out from context clues, or maybe you just learned it from a recall knowledge check, or maybe the DM just told you. But then once you know that, everyone at the table knows that, things should go real quick. And, kind of taking a broader step of that, in combat, it's very clear when it's your turn, the initiative. But when you're not in combat, realize that there's still kind of an initiative, right? Ideally, we should be taking turns and we should be trying to accomplish a goal.
Especially accomplishing the goal.
Yeah. And if you're doing those things, then you're going to find that not only are your role play scenes much more entertaining, they're also going to go a lot faster too, because instead of just kind of aimlessly wandering and sprouting out bad Lord of the Rings Shakespearean style dialogue, you're actually going to be focused. You're going to say, okay, I know what we're trying to do in this scene. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to say a couple of things that demonstrate maybe some of my character's personality or some of their flaws, and then boom, we'll move along. And after everyone's had a chance to shine a little bit and we've made some forward progress, we'll end the scene and we'll go to the next one. And that's going to give you that sense of forward momentum. It's going to give you that sense of progress that can sometimes be lacking in role-playing games, where you come to someone's house and you sit down for 4 hours or 5 hours and you leave and you said, yeah, I had a fun time, but what did we even do?
You mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
A couple of our sessions.
Sure. It happens. I mean,
But
and look,
I think you learn from those sessions too.
yeah, and you can have fun with it. But at the end of the day, I think we all wish we could play more campaigns and more characters.
Sign me up.
And, most campaigns die and they wither on the vine. They don't get a chance to finish. So the faster you can make it through your combats, the faster you can make it through your role-playing encounters, means that you're going to be able to have a chance to actually finish those campaigns, see some of those storylines play all the way out, see some of those high-level, awesome, broken spells and abilities. And so I think you do a good service to your players and to your game master by trying to make sure that your game sessions move as smoothly and as efficiently as possible.
Right here.
Yeah.
Try and get that stuff. I mean, I really want to get through some of these APs, and I think the better we all can do this as a team, and you at your table can get through, I think you guys will all enjoy more.
Yeah. Hey, we're all paying a premium to be here. I mean, not saying it in any weird way, but like your time is valuable. Sure. And, we're trying to meet once a week. And if I can maximize, the efficiency of the time I'm saving, if I can maximize my time efficiently, I'm saving your time. I'm making things easier for you guys too.
Yeah.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, that is kind of where our conversation landed today about speeding up your game, and some of it was more philosophical than necessarily practical, but I do think it's something that you should think about, and I'd love to know your thoughts on what you've done at your table in order to sort of improve the quality of your session. So leave a like, leave a comment below, subscribe if you want to hear more from us. But
if you really want to hear more from Derek, get on that Patreon.
We do have a Patreon. We're very, very, very happy, very proud of our Patreon. It's growing.
Thank you guys. I mean, you guys are fun. I listen. I'm chatting with you guys all the time. It's fun.
Yeah, so it's been it's actually been a lot of fun. So, we're building a little community here, and we'd love to have you join us. So please feel free to check out that out in the links below. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time on Knights of Last Call.